Hey everybody, it's Brooke with the Buttered Home. Welcome to my messy kitchen. It's unusual, we're going live later than normal, but I'm out here working, so we've talked a lot this weekend about pecans, so I thought that we would roast some in live time, since I obviously have people who struggle with this. Let me just get everything situated. And first of all, happy Sunday. I hope you've had a blessed day. My day this morning was fantastic, and then I got to see the grandkids this afternoon, and then I came home and you know, I talked a little bit about this, I think last week, about having a bad habit about working some on Sunday, and so I thought, well, I'll get ahead, I'll shoot a video, and I did. Let's just say it was a sweet, a dessert, and it's layered, and I thought I was filming and I did not film the layering part. It's okay, I can recover, but I'm not making the dessert again, because when I make it to film it, that's usually the third time that I have made this dessert, and Big D and I do not need it again. So it's going to be a very telling, very real, honest, home cook type video, but it'll still show you pretty much everything you need to know. We still discuss what we did. You just won't actually see me layer the dessert, but that's coming probably in September. So I'll remind you guys later when we get closer to that. But one of my earliest recipes that I did back in 2018 was just to show a really easy way on how to roast and salt pecans. That's a very nutritious, protein-packed snack. It's very popular here in the South. It was one of my granddaddy and it's one of my daddy's favorite snacks. So I thought, well, I'll let my kind of tips and tricks kind of cover that too, because in the last almost 7 years, I've had lots of people who say that they're burnt when they make them, and they're not. Pecans are a really smoky nut. So there are a lot of mistakes that some people tend to make with them. First of all, is they already buy them already roasted, and then they try to roast them again. I promise you, I have found out that they do that. You have to start off with raw pecans for them not to get too done. That's a real thing, not even joking. The second thing, a raw pecan already has kind of a smoky flavor anyway, because they're a naturally really earthy nut. They're my favorite. Them and peanuts are my favorite tree nuts. I love them. They're both protein packed. They're good for you. They have tons of fiber. There's just like all kinds of vitamins and minerals. I could just list and list about how good they are. But for this to be such a simple thing, you have to stay with it. And that's one of the things that I stress on a lot of our recipes, is that if you're in the kitchen, take the time and care for the food that you're cooking. So we're going to do this in real time. I'm going to swap my camera overhead, and I have to show off my blue willow towel. Isn't it pretty? Y'all know I'm a blue willow nut, so I got my little blue willow towel out here, just, you know, for an accent piece. But one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to mix this in a jar, just because it's easier. Whenever I roast pecans, I do tend to do them in small batches. So my recipe is a small batch recipe. It's a cup of raw pecan halves. It's about 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and then about a half a teaspoon of salt. So I've got my 2 tablespoons of melted butter in my jar, and I'm just going to put my pecans in there after I spill about half of them. And I like doing it in the jar because you can shake it up and make sure that they're all covered in that butter. Now you can do this in a mixing bowl, that's fine. But that's about 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and that's usually ample for, you know, about a cup of pecans. I have my oven preheated to 350. And then I'm just going to pour these out and just spread them out in a single layer. Okay, this is also important. Well, number one, the butter was important because mixing them in a jar, make sure you see how they're all kind of shiny. Mixing them in a jar allows for you to kind of shake them real good and get that butter. Whereas if you just stir them in a bowl, you may not get that butter so much evenly distributed. So try to get them in a single layer. And this is important for even browning because if they're crowded up, you don't want them to be so crowded that, you know, some of them get too brown and some of them don't get brown enough. And then we're just going to take probably about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And now a lot of people add their salt after, and that's fine. However, the butter is wet right now, right? So it'll stick, it'll adhere. So the whole recipe calls for about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt for a cup of pecans. So we're using about 1/2 of that, which is about a 1/4 of that teaspoon, and going ahead and salting them now. So I'm going to put these in the oven for about 5 to 7 minutes. Now that's 350, 5 to 7 minutes. At about the 2 to 3 minute mark, I'm going to check them. This is where that not walking away is really important. So let's do that, and I'll put them in my oven, and then I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes, and then we will look at them. We'll check them. We'll make sure that they look like we want them to, and then we can stir them or flip them at that point if they're already getting too brown. Another thing that is good to remember, everybody's oven is different. So most people, if you cook a lot, you know if your oven runs hot or cold. So if your oven does have the tendency to run a little hot, you can bump the temperature down a bit or cook them for less time. Whatever works for you. So it's not rocket science. Roasting nuts is probably one of the easiest things you can do. But if you don't take the time to just kind of look at it and stay with it, then, you know, it can get burned or whatever. But so while we're together and we're going to be here for a few minutes, I'm going to mix up my bread for baking for tomorrow. So when I do sourdough, I always mix my bread at night, and then I do stretch and folds to develop the gluten tonight, and then tomorrow I'll bake with it after it bulk ferments. So we're not going to talk a lot about sourdough. It's just something that I can work on doing while we're waiting on the pecans. Because after this I have to go in and cook supper. And the high today here was 50, and that was at like 5 o'clock this morning. And then all throughout the day, it just kind of plummeted. We're expecting some snow here on Tuesday. Tomorrow it's going to be bitterly cold. So tonight, I'm making chili. And I'll step away and share this in just a minute. But we have a Buttered Home Recipe potluck group too, where me and other people who do recipes share recipes. It's a really good resource. If you're not a member of that, I'll share the link in the comments where you can go over and sign up to be in that potluck group. And tonight I shared 4 different chili recipes, something for everybody. Something with a biscuit topping that's also keto, a chili without beans, a white chicken chili, and an Instant Pot traditional chili that is probably our favorite. That's one I also did back in 2018 when we first started. That's one of my most popular recipes, is that authentic Instant Pot chili recipe. Cold weather. I have a love-hate relationship with it, right? I love to cook when it gets cold. I don't like to be cold. I don't know about you. Also, we'd ask that you stop now while we got a break and go ahead and share this video. If you're watching with us on Facebook, there's a little swirly arrow at the bottom, a swoopy arrow at the bottom. If you'll just hit that, it'll automatically share to your timeline, and it shouldn't take you away from what we're doing here. If you're watching with us on YouTube, there is also a share button there, and you can copy that link and share it to the social media platform of your choice. Big headline the last 18 hours. Okay, my timer's up. Let me see what they look like. One good thing is I don't smell them. They're fine. I'm gonna let them go for 2 or 3 more minutes. Normally you can, pecans and peanuts, you'll start to smell them. You'll smell that roasted nut smell, and it's fabulous. But this is just the first leg of us cooking these, so you probably won't smell them until we stir them up and then we put them back in there, because they need to cook after we stir them for another 5 to 7 minutes. But checking them every 2 to 3 minutes, it's not going to cost you anything. It costs you about 10 seconds of your life. And that way you don't end up taking those pecans and throwing them in the trash. I always try to roast nuts like this in the oven when I'm not doing anything else, so that because nuts can be expensive. I buy mine from our friends over at Priester's Pecans. I love them. Wonderful, beautiful family, just precious people, and they have the best pecans, and I'll drop a link to that too if you wanted to see about getting you some bulk pecans to keep on hand. I keep mine in the freezer so we can have them all year long. They last like nobody's business. But the big headline has been TikTok was down for like 18 hours because it was banned or whatever. And yes, I'm on TikTok. I know that there's a lot of people who follow me here who are not on TikTok. Some people have some very strong feelings about TikTok. I like TikTok. I have started in the last year sharing more to TikTok, you know, just because it's a good idea. I posted this morning about that because TikTok is a lot like YouTube. It's a lot like Instagram and Facebook. It's a social media platform. I don't own that platform, so I get messages all the time about people who are not seeing my content, things like that. I have no control over that on these platforms. What I do have control of is my website, and my website been running smooth sailing since 2018, pretty much. Okay, let me check my nuts again. Okay, we're good. We finished about a 2-minute, so a total of 5 minutes. And I know I'm jumping from one thing to another, but just want to let you see. See, they're starting to get nice and pretty and brown. So now I'm just gonna kind of move them, stir them and shake them. And they are starting to smell kind of fragrant. And I've seen lots of people do these like in the microwave and things like that, and that's fine. This is just, most everybody I know has an oven. Most everybody I know trusts their oven, and most everybody I know is used to using their oven. So this is kind of our preferred way, and certainly my dad and Big D's favorite way to have these. Now you don't have to flip them over. See, we stirred them up real good, and that butter is starting to kind of cook into the nuts. So now we're just gonna place these back in the oven for another 5 to 7 minutes. And we will check them again at 3. Set my timer. But nonetheless, oh, there's Big D. Did you hear I was cooking? Did you hear I was roasting pecans? Nonetheless, social media is wonderful. It's great for so many things. It's been a really good way for a lot of creators, especially TikTok creators, to kind of provide for their family. I know several people who have just taken off and learned how to use TikTok and just share helpful information with people, and they have, you know, made like an income stream for their family, and I think that's wonderful. So the ban on it was kind of scary because I know a lot of people invest a lot into that, and they thought they lost it. Social media is not guaranteed. It's not. I won't share that. He just gave me a tip, so we're going to be using the word pecans. Big D with his own live tip. Let's not use the word nuts, is what he said. Y'all, it's never a dull moment at my house. Laughter, it's good for the soul. But nonetheless, the best thing that you can do for any creator that you follow is find out how to interact with them directly. Because social media is a volatile thing, and we've seen that in the last 18 hours. And so the best way you can do that is to have a direct line to them. A lot of people have websites, a lot of people have email lists, things like that. And you know, there are a lot of you that I communicated with yesterday by email. So, you know, find the people that you really like and the people that you love to follow and their content, and find a way to follow them so that if the bottom falls out of social media, you don't lose that contact with them. I tell people all the time who talk about that they haven't seen me on Facebook or whatever. You know, I have very little control over that. I love social media because I get to do things like this. But by and large, the only way that I have to guarantee that I'm with you is by my email list and by you coming to thebutteredhome.com. So find ways to interact with the people that you follow directly. Number one, it'll mean a lot to them. And number two, your support on their direct means of website or email or things like that can still help support them and their families if that is, you know, if that is their source of income. And income is different for everybody. Hold on, I'm seeing how much water I need to use. Sorry about that. And not everybody who's on social media, not everybody makes an income either. Some people do this just because they like to share and they like to help others, which is why I started doing this myself, so that I could help people to fall in love with cooking, whether it be for the first time or the 50th. Timer's going off. Okay, we're good. So we're gonna set our timer for about 2 more minutes, and that'll get us at an additional 5. And we can go as high as 7. You know, the size of your pecans matters too. If you've got some small pecans, these are mammoth that I'm using. But the size matters. So if you have really small pecans, they're going to cook a little faster. It's just like chicken breast, right? It's the same thing, pretty much. All right, checking my sourdough here. Trying to get all my ingredients in here. I'm doing Big D a sandwich bread. So it's going to have a little honey and oil in it. And my honey will make noise. But those are some really great tips in times of uncertainty for the people that you follow on social media. Just support them the best way that you can. knowing that nothing is really ever guaranteed. So now my pecans smell wonderful. I'm starting to really smell the roasted notes in the air. And they're so good. And you'll notice I've set a timer every single time that we have been over there to check them or put them in the oven, things like that. That is so very important. Anytime you're taking the time to cook something, especially for other people, don't get busy and you want to stay with it. Okay, let's see how they are. That was my 2-minute timer. We're going to let them go just for a minute more. They smell beautiful. Oh no, not 21 minutes. That would be a catastrophe. We probably already hit 30 seconds, just me fooling with that timer. So if you do make sourdough bread and you make like a sandwich type bread, when you add oil in it like I've done, and we'll take a look at it. I know y'all are curious just to see. That oil never really goes all the way in. It's like oil and water, right? They say oil and water doesn't mix. So now I'm going to add my bread flour in and try to do it without making just a huge mess. And it calls for like 500 grams, so that's a bunch of scoops. And I've got it on a scale. When I make bread, I do tend to weigh everything. It's kind of like baking. You know, I've had good results with just kind of winging it, but it's better if you can, if you do start the sourdough journey, to, you know, weigh everything, especially on the baking end of things. Now, on the feeding your starter end of things, I don't necessarily, I do tend to wing it, in other words. All right, let's get these out, and I'm gonna let them cool for just a minute. I'll bring them over here and let you see them. See how pretty they are? Now, do those look burnt to you? They're a dark caramel color, which is roasted, right? So we're gonna take that other 1/4 teaspoon of salt and salt them. And then I'm just gonna let them cool while I mix up my bread dough over here. We talk just a little bit more. So I guess the most important thing whenever you're roasting any nuts like this is, you know your equipment. Like I talked about, knowing your oven and things like that, knowing what its limitations are. As far as heating and things like that, and then just being mindful and sticking with it and staying with it. But see how simple that was, and just so easy and so good and just wholesome. And then, you know, I'll tell you too that pecans are just so good for you, and I'm hoping that they're like almost, maybe I get a couple, I'm gonna get a couple off the pan, set them over here so that maybe they'll cool. Pecans are so good for you. So in a cup has like 9 grams of protein. That's a lot. Now, of course, a cup is a pretty big serving. It would be easier for me to sit here and eat every single one of these. But in a normal serving, which is probably about 1/3 of these right here, you get, they're very low on carbs. This recipe for one serving has 1 net carb. So if you're watching your carb count, the roasted nuts, and they are slightly sweet, So they do tend to kind of curb that sweet craving sometimes that you might have. Roasting them brings out the natural sweetness of the pecans. So this is one good little snack to have if you're trying to watch like your carb intake. And when I say net carbs simply means that it's your total carbs minus how many grams of fiber you have. So ideally, you want to eat carbs that are high in fiber. That's fruits, nuts, sweet vegetables, things like that. So carrots and other things like that, sweet potatoes, they all tend to be kind of higher on the carb scale for vegetables, but they are just filled with fiber. So you simply take that total carb number and you deduct the amount of fiber that there is from that number, and that's your net carbs. The reason why that matters is the more fibrous the food is, the easier it is to digest, and the less likely it is to cause a blood sugar spike. Now, blood sugar spike normally happens every time you eat. It's what happens after the spike in blood sugar. If it drops real low, then some people can have a crash. For normal sugar-filled things, you have that spike and then you have a deep crash, and that's where people get shaky and things like that. But if you eat a low glycemic carb like a nut or fruit, things that have higher fiber content, you'll have less of a blood sugar spike and more of a stable period after that. You think they're cool yet? All right, they're cool enough, so I'm gonna try one. See, that just tastes like going to my granddaddy's house. It's so good, so good. And I'm gonna have to split these with my dad and with Big D. Or either just make another batch. That's probably what I'll do. I'll just make another batch. But making them in small batches like this, number one, ensures that they don't burn. And number two, that you just don't go crazy eating a bunch of pecans. But they're so good and so easy to make. 3 ingredients. I don't even really it's just 2, because I don't even count the salt as an ingredient. That's just a accoutrement. I'm going to go tend to my bread, close up shop out here, share these pecans with Big D, take my dad's to him tomorrow. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this and seen how easy it is. But also, oh, and I have one more tip to share with you, so we're not going yet, but I hope you saw how easy this was just to roast it in the oven. And you can do peanuts this way, you can do almonds this way, you can do all kind of nuts this way. You just want to keep an eye on them just like we did and watch your cooking time to make sure that they get done. Well, I did actually have a tip, since it is Sunday and it's our tip of the week. So this time of year, if you cook with fresh herbs, they're kind of hard to, like, I don't grow herbs in the wintertime. I don't have a greenhouse or anything like that, but I love to cook with fresh herbs. And this is probably a common tip, but when I buy the bundles at the grocery store of the fresh herbs, when I get home, I put them in water, like a vase or a cup like this, whatever. And then I keep them in the fridge. I just take a zip top bag and just put it over the top. What that does is that helps the moisture that's going in from the stem of the herb to also be trapped in here and create almost like a small greenhouse effect. These beauties, and I'll show them to you just so you can see. These beauties have been parked in my fridge for almost a week, and you can't even tell it. There's no browning, there's no slime, no nothing. All my stems are still vibrant, just as vibrant as the tops. and they'll stay good in the refrigerator as long as you keep them covered like this for almost up to 2 weeks for the real leafy things. So that is a good tip, that if you like to cook with fresh herbs, you can do it even in the wintertime and just buy a little bunch. I think these were like $1, and this is parsley, at the grocery store, and you won't feel like you're wasting anything. You can pull out what you need and keep them and cook with them again and again and again and again. So you just make like a little bitty refrigerator greenhouse. Anyway, I hope y'all have enjoyed this tonight. I know we went long, but we did cook live, and that's something that I wanted to do this weekend. I hope those of you in the southeast are all prepped for this snow. We were talking at church this morning, and this friend of ours said, I think it only snows here about once every 10 years. So I'm sure there's no bread, milk, or eggs on any shelf in any store down here. I would just encourage you that if you do live in the area, and we are not used to snow, a lot of people pick on us about that, but we're not. It's just not. It's usually like 60 degrees here in January, so we're not used to it. My best advice that I can give you is stay off the road. If you don't have somewhere you absolutely have to be, just enjoy being at home where it's warm and nice and you can relax, take a day off. Just stay at home and leave the roads to the first responders, to all of the utility people, and all of the people who have to work. It's so important that, number one, you stay safe, and number two, that you leave the roads where all of those people can do the jobs that they need to do so that you can stay safe and warm. So that's my other tip for you if you're in the southeast and you're expecting some once a decade snow like we are, just stay home. There's nothing that important. And if it is, do it tomorrow before it gets to, well, like us, it is going to be here on Tuesday. You may be somewhere else where it's hitting you tomorrow, but just if you have to do something, just do it before the weather gets bad, and stay safe and stay at home. So from all of us here at the Buttered Home, we hope that you have enjoyed our pecans, and we hope that you have enjoyed our greenery tip, as well as just the fellowship of being together. We would appreciate that you share this video. I have dropped a couple of links in the comments for the recipe that we made, as well as how to sign up for our VIP email list. I talked a little bit about our Buttered Home recipe group, and I will drop a link in there as soon as we get done about how to join that. Y'all, I love y'all. Y'all stay warm, y'all stay safe, and from B and Big D, we sure love y'all.